Welcome to Lesson 4 of ABCs and 1-2-3s of Music Theory, and this is on major scale degree characteristics. Before you start, make sure you download the PDF booklet on major scale degree characteristics so you can follow along. Before getting into the major scale degree characteristics, we first need to look at solfege. Now, solfege is a traditional system that simply assigns syllables to each tone of a scale. By assigning a sound to each scale degree, it allows us to hear and sing the notes and refer to all keys at once. Let's look at the root of a scale as an example. The root of a scale is named do in solfege, and by referring to the sound do, that means we're talking about the root of every scale at the same time. And because of that, we can attach any of the characteristics to the syllable do as opposed to a specific note. This is because a note can function as a scale degree in any other key at any time, whereas do is always the root of a key. The type of solfege we're going to refer to is called movable do. And in movable do, each solfege syllable corresponds not to a specific pitch, but to a specific scale degree. So the first scale degree of a major scale is always do, the second scale degree will always be re, the third will always be mi, and so on. This means a particular scale, and in our case, we're going to look at the major scale first, will always use the same solfege syllables no matter what key it's in. Again, so we can refer to all keys at once. So if we look at the center of the chart, we can see that the major scale is simply do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and do. Now it doesn't matter which note the tonic is. That could be C major, that could be F major, that could be B flat major. Again, it helps condition our ear to know the relative sound and character of each note in relationship to a tonic, no matter where you are on the scale at all times. The notes on the top and the bottom of the chart cover the other notes of the chromatic scale, or altered intervals. For now, we're just going to focus on the center line, the solfege for the major scale. So what do we mean by scale degree characteristics? Well, each note or scale degree in the major scale has a distinct character and tendency due to its relationship to the tonic of a key center. And by using solfege, we're going to attach this characteristics to each solfege syllable so that we can talk about the characteristics in all keys. Now, the characteristic of each scale degree is tied to the overtone series. The overtone series is just simply a collection of tones that are created by the natural vibrations that occurs in a low string that's struck in the fundamental register. Now what that means is you can think of a note on a piano, let's say a very low note C. And within the sound of that note, there are other tones inside of it that occur at different frequencies above the fundamental, and they're happening at the same time, but at different volumes. These are also often referred to as harmonics. So if you look at the diagram of the overtone series, you can see the first note is the fundamental C. Then the first overtone is an octave above C. Then we see the fifth, or G, as the second overtone. The third overtone is another C 2 octaves above the fundamental. And then the fourth overtone is E, or mi, of the major scale. The rest of the overtones continue to get closer together, and some notes are only approximate to the pitch in our 12-note scale. For now, we're just going to focus on the first few overtones. So a basic explanation of how the overtone series helps create scale degree characteristics is this. If you establish the note C as the tonic of a major scale or initial point of rest, the farther away you move from the fundamental, the more unstable or active these notes become. So the closest notes to the fundamental are the most stable, which are the second overtone, which is so, and the fourth overtone, which is mi. And every other note in the major scale tend to feel active or dynamic in terms of these points of rest. What that simply means is that if the first, third, and fifth degrees of the scale feel static or like a resting home base, all the other scale degrees tend to want to resolve to those notes. It's for this reason that a lot of people often refer to our ear being naturally wired with the sound of the overtone series, and it's our reference for the feeling of stability in music or in a song. So with this natural wiring, we tend to feel that anything that goes against the overtone series is somewhat unnatural, and we feel that it's either pushed or pulled back to that natural state of rest. So let's compare the major scale to the overtone series and see what happens. So if we take a look at the overtone series again from the fundamental C, we see that our fundamental is do. Our second overtone is so, or in this case the note G. And our fourth overtone is mi, or in this case the note E. These are the loudest overtones because of their close proximity to this fundamental, and they're heard as the most stable and natural to our ear. Now if we go further in the series, we can see that the overtone number 8 is re of the major scale. Overtone number 12 is La of the major scale, or the 6th degree of the scale. And overtone number 14 is Ti, or the 7th degree of the major scale. What we don't find in the overtone series is the note Fa, or the 4th degree of the scale. So what this means is that each note within the major scale has a distinct characteristic or function. It's either going to be static, which is a point of rest or stability, and often the end of motion. It's going to be dynamic, which is either a point of tension or motion, but doesn't create an expectation of where the note wants to resolve. And then we have the directional dynamic, which is a point of tension, but also it creates an expectation or predicts where it wants to resolve. So for the major scale, we have Do, which is static. We have Re, which is dynamic. It can either resolve down to Do or up to Mi. Mi is static. Fa is directional dynamic. So this means that it predicts where it wants to resolve. And in this case, Fa always wants to resolve to Mi. Because of its proximity, it's only a half step away from Mi. These half steps are going to become very important as you begin to compose. The 5th degree, So, is considered to be static. There are some exceptions as you move So into the fundamental. We're going to look at that in future lessons. La, or the 6th degree of the major scale, is dynamic. It can also resolve down to So or continue on up to Do, the root of the scale. Ti, or the 7th degree of the major scale, is the second of the directional dynamic scale degrees. Ti, because its close proximity to Do, wants to or predicts that it resolves up to Do. Now the half steps between Ti and Do and Fa and Mi play a very important part in defining the tonality of a major scale. So again, for these directional dynamic scale degrees, Fa wants to resolve to Mi and Ti wants to resolve to Do. These half steps define the tonality of the major scale to our ear, and it's the position of these half steps with respect to the root of a scale that tells your ear that you're in this major scale. Now you can hear these tendencies just by playing the major scale. If we start at the root of the C major scale, stopping on Ti, you could feel the tendency to want to resolve up to that Do. And to show how Fa wants to resolve, we can start at the top Do and work our way down. Though a little less obvious, you can feel that that Fa wants to resolve to that next note, Mi, and then continue down to Do. Now, although you need to memorize which notes are dynamic and which notes are static, the key concept that you really need to grasp from this lesson is that the note Fa resolves to Mi and Ti wants to resolve to Do. It's the movement and presence of these half steps that defines the major scale to the ear. We're going to look at how these half steps play an important part in melody and harmony, and how they create points of tension and resolution in a song. So go over the video a couple of times, go through the book, memorize which notes are static, which notes are dynamic, and which notes are directional dynamic, and play the major scale in different keys. And you'll notice that these characteristics remain true no matter which note your tonic is. And then once you feel comfortable with the material, take the quiz, and you can move on to the next lesson.